Happy Tuesday, and welcome back to another episode of the Account for Life podcast. Jay Moore, the Healthy Accountant, helping you to account for your life. Today, we're looking at what's blocking the will of God in our lives, or what's blocking God's will for our life. And Jesus laid out a plan for how we should talk to God, how we should think about God, and how we should communicate with God. And he laid out a really awesome plan in Matthew. And it says, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy will be done as it is in heaven and on earth." So we're going to look at thy will be done and really what comes before that and why we are literally blocking God's will for our life. And we don't understand why. So I was in an interesting conversation yesterday with my mom. We were talking, just kind of chatting it up. And we were talking about a number of things, and health was really at the forefront. She was sharing something about a family member and what was going on in their life. And, and it's things that we have control over that we tend not to get control over because we've just been indoctrinated into systems and ways and paradigms. And so we're talking. I says, "Mom, I want you to think about something. I want you to think about, how we cut off the flow of abundance, of life, of health, of whatever it is. We cut it off and we don't know that we're cutting it off." And so I used the metaphor. I said, think of a pipe. Think of a pipe. I want you to think of a pipe today. And it could be a pipe this big, but most pipes in your house are probably about that wide, right? So think of a pipe and think of water going through it. There's water going through it. But imagine if a whole bunch of paper, rubbish, waste, whatever just start building up in the pipe. Over time, what's going to happen? Come on, what's going to happen? A lot of times, my mom says the pipe's going to burst. And that the pipe burst because it's backed up. Something is blocking the water from passing through. Now let's take it to God's will. God's will is flowing through all of our lives. It's flowing like a frequency. I know we weren't taught any of this in school, but it's flowing like a frequency. And so God's will is readily available for every person on this planet to tap into the frequency, right? We got to tap into the right frequency and think of the frequency as a radio program. It's pretty simple, right? You've heard of radio, and if I were to go in my car, turn on my radio, in order to get a station, what would I have to do? I got to tune in, right? I got to tune in. I got to make sure that, hey, I would like abundance. I got to tune in to the right frequency. See, because if I tune into 91, 92.3, it may not be there. If I tune into 96.3, if I tune into 104.1 or 105.7, if I tune into whatever station, but it's not the station that's broadcasting what I'm looking for, then I'm going to get the wrong stuff. And imagine you just constantly getting the wrong stuff. You're constantly getting the wrong stuff. This is where the block comes in. You're constantly getting things that's stopping the flow. Stopping the flow. What are things that stop the flow? Oh man, this is I'm not going to get a lot political here. What I am going to get is I'm going to get not political, but I'm going to get informational. Not political, but informational. And so think about all the information that's coming out of places. Think of all the media channels that are open right now. But if we hone in onto the main media channels, I'm not going to call any names. The main media channels, whatever main media channels those are, you tune into the main media channels, what's coming off on that frequency? What's coming out of that channel? And I'm telling you, like I used to get on the treadmill and walk and, get on the elliptical, and I would get on the I would do the stairs and stuff like that at the gym. And right in front of me, all these TVs. I can't hear them, but I can see them. Seeing is just the same as hearing. Because in seeing what they see, the news realize all we got to do is put a ticker down below. Put the ticker down below. We make sure we got words on the screen for people to be able to read it. So I used to be walking, I'm like, this is so annoying. I don't want to see any of this. I remember I was just like, I don't do as much walking on the treadmill these days, even though I like walking on the treadmill at like 10% or 15%, 12%, because it's a really good exercise to do, because that's called like steady state cardio. And when you do steady state cardio, especially the more challenging that it can become, like going up a hill, you can, if you needed to lose weight but not really lose weight, you can burn more calories, which then could help you to lose weight if that's what you were trying to do. So that's why we do it. But I was like, I cannot afford for this information to get locked up in my mind, because we're talking about the blocking. All right, so let's get down to the practical. How does one, Jesus left this framework. He says, hey, if you're going to pray, he didn't say here's what you should pray. He says here how you should pray. And I remember just the Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. You say this prayer over and over, and it's like, that ain't no prayer. That's the framework of the prayer. So when we get into a state of prayer, man, it's kind of like I heard a guy. I heard somebody this morning, because I spend my mornings in inspiration. I spend my if I'm going to be in inspiration, I've got to get inspired. I got to get inspired within myself. And I got inspired about prayer today. And when I got inspired about prayer, here's what happened. I was listening to a podcast, Know Thyself podcast, really good. I'm not even sure the guy's name. I think his name's Andre something, but I just kind of saw it because some people that I knew was on it. And Michael Beckworth, if you're familiar with him, he's a thought leader, spiritual thought leader, and he was in The Secret. He was the one black guy in The Secret. So if you watched The Secret and you saw a black guy, I'm like, yo, a black guy in here, wow, only one. But no, he's deep. And so he's interviewed on the Know Thyself podcast. And I was just like, he said something profound that really got me, man. And I was just like, I said, this is now he's paraphrasing. He paraphrased something about prayer that Jesus already said. He says, when you pray, you are in the state, you have to be in a state that you already have what you are praying for. Guys, we're talking about blocking God. We're talking about blocking the flow today. We're talking about keeping ourselves away from what it is that we actually desire. I'm going to show you something, man, because I did not know this was possible. I did not know this was possible. These are books. This is like part of my life's work. And look, it's a big deal. Here's why it's a big deal. This is Thy Will Be Done. You know what's crazy? This book was the first thing that I did. I did this book first. May of 2020 is when this book, the manuscript was created. I'm like, man, this book is getting out there. You know, that book just got released in 2024. Right after that happened, as I was working on that book, I finished the manuscript, but I wasn't sure what to do. So because God hadn't given me any direction. And then God gave me some direction towards the end of 2020. He says, next level of faith, buddy. He says, he says, get a book like that written. I was like, well, how am I going to do that? And he showed me how to do that. God gave me the words, the wisdom. He gave me the people. He sent people that would then help to write this book. Like, wow, that was interesting. And so then here it is. This book is written. I had another book that's not written that got started. And when I was working with my writing team, they were like, hey, this is actually 2 books. I'm like, wow, it's 2 books? He says, yeah, it's a lot of information. So instead of writing like a 400-page book, you can just write 2 books. I was like, yeah, you're right about that. So we worked on it. I think we've kind of got 1 book kind of completed, and it went flat. It was crazy. That was in 2022. It went flat. It was almost like God halted me. It was so bananas. I'm like, God, what happened? Like, I thought we were going this direction. But when I look back, see, guys, when I look back on what was happening during that time period, God is like, yo, man, you tripping. There were some things that I was doing. I was not focused. I was involved with some stuff that wasn't good, and I didn't realize it. Now I know it now, but I didn't know it back then. God's will wasn't being done, so he had to stop it. He says, I cannot afford. See, when God's will is working in your life, God doesn't want you to fail. No. That's, if you do, hey, that wasn't God's will. God's will is not for you to fail. When we fail at something, when we make mistakes, that was us. So here's the question. What's actually blocking God's will in our life? And it's not just the stuff that blocks us. You want to know what it is? Ego. I got a book over here. It's called Ego is the Enemy, written by Ryan Holiday. It's a good book. You should check it out. And think about, what is ego? So the phrase that we all must have heard at some point was edging God out. I don't want to edge God out, but a lot of times we edge God out. We edge him out from what he's doing in our life. Wow. We're edging God out for what he would like to do in our life. So, man, it's kind of deep here, because I don't know about you, but I know I've edged God out a lot, much of my life. I've presumed things about my life. I've done things that did not represent his will for my life. I've focused on things that caused me tons of pain. And I've allowed my ego to be my own personal enemy. So, had something happen yesterday. I'm not going to get in deep with it, but I'm going to just kind of use it as a stepping stone here as we look to unlock the will of God in our life. And sometimes, especially when you have kids, they are a mirror. They are a mirror of who you were, and sometimes they're a mirror exactly of who you are right at the moment. And I had something happen that I'm drawing inspiration from it today, where, my oldest son just, he has desires. He shared the desires with me, and then I saw something opposite, and it bothered me. But what I realized is that it's just a mirror. It's kind of like when you look at your kids, you can't get mad at them because your kids are the embodiment of you, and you're going to get mad at yourself. And so what I did last night, it really brought me to tears. Last night, as I was getting my mind ready for today, like to go to bed, and this is what I came up with. When you take responsibility for everything around you, for all the situations, all the circumstances, all the issues, all the problems, all the good, when you take responsibility for all of that in your experience, that's where you can find God's will. See, because God took responsibility for the problems. He took responsibility when he knew there was an opportunity for sin to come into the world. He knew there was an opportunity, and he immediately took responsibility. Even before it came, he said, you know what? If something happens, we already got a plan for that. So let me ask you a question. Do you have a plan for when the inevitable happens? Whatever the inevitable is, it could be, it could be, just failure in business, right? Problems with your kids, problem with a spouse. Do you have a plan? Do you have a way around it? Do you have a way through it? Do you have a plan to fix it? This is where God's will comes in and just swoops in. See, what Beckworth did in the podcast for me when he was sharing this realization that he came into as it relates to the writings of Jesus, really, because what he said is, when you pray, he said, when you pray, you must already be in the state of knowing. You must already be in a state of knowing. You cannot go into prayer wondering. You're asking God for something, and he's like, I already gave you the power for that. You just should be here. We should be talking to God about how good that is. How good that is for him. How good the fact that he's allowing this experience so that his will can be done in our life. The last thing any of us want to do is block God's will when God's will yields power for us. Who doesn't want power? All right. So we figured it out. Like, what's blocking the will of God in our life? It's the ego. Just down and dirty, it comes down to the ego. And then the second thing is all the junk. It's the junk. It's the stuff. It's the things that we've allowed to run our experience that are actually lies. And last week we talked about suspended beliefs, because beliefs are constructs, right? Beliefs, like Michael Beckworth said on the podcast, he says belief is a placeholder for knowing. Come on. What? Belief is a placeholder for knowing. It's a placeholder. It's kind of like, until you know it, I guess you gotta have to believe it until you know it. Until you know it. Think about, what do you know? When you know something, can nobody sway you from what you know? You don't know how to tie your shoes? What are you talking about? I know how to tie my shoes. You don't know how to brush your teeth? I know how to brush my teeth. You don't know how to walk? You don't know how to talk? I know how to do all that stuff. You can't tell me to believe any of that, because I know how to do it. I know what it is. And until we know it, we are walking in a shell of who we are. And because we believe, I'm not saying belief is not needed, because, like I said, belief, like Michael Beckworth said, I'm quoting him, belief is a placeholder for knowing. It's kind of like the training wheels. You put the training wheels on. It's kind of like when you go to church and do the religion thing. It's kind of like a friend of mine, Andre Campbell. He says, man, it's good. Like religion is good to a point. Like, it takes you to a point. It gets you going. It gets you a foundation. And what happens is, but at some point you got to graduate, because it gets you to believe, but it doesn't get you to know. And until we know, we could be potentially blocking God's will for our life. Potentially. So what does one do? And so that was all the context, and we're going to get quickly into what does one do so that they don't block the will of God. It's back to last week's program. Suspend all your beliefs. Act like you don't know nothing. Act like you don't believe anything so that you can then create new beliefs. Like if you want to really allow God's will to come through your life for the abundance, and this is the abundance in everything, health, right? Relationships, finances, business, ministry, like all the stuff. Like if we want to allow the abundance of these things to flow with us and in us and through us, then we got to step back and say, I don't believe nothing. Okay, I believe. I know that. Oh, that's got to go. Oh, that's got to go. Oh, that's got to go. This is where I'm going. This is what I would like to know. What would you like to know? So here's the last question. What would you like to know about God's will for your life? That's the question. That's the question you should ask today. What would you like to know about God's will for your life? And just ask the question and sit on the question and allow the question to answer itself in you. It will. And Jay, well, I haven't heard it yet. Well, keep asking, keep waiting. But here's the thing, you got to block everything else out. You got to unplug, you got to detach, you got to get away from stuff that will keep you from it. Because if you stay in the same thing that's feeding a different nature, then it's not going to come. It's not happening. God's nature is too beautiful for it to be in chaos. So ask that question and allow the transformation to get started in your personal life, your personal journey. Guys, I'm super excited today. I'm Jay Moore, the Healthy Accountant. I help people to account for their life, and I also help people to account for their life by way of taxes. And this book, which is on the horizon to be released on Friday, June the 14th, which you can go grab your copy. I'm going to be going live on the page to share the story of how God wrote this book. I'm also going to see if I can get my publisher, to go live with me maybe another day, just to kind of talk about authorship and telling stories and how they got involved and how they got started with really helping people to write books. Because I believe that today, it's nothing like a great story. It's nothing like a great writing of some sort. And I know that many of us have things in us that we are not understanding because we're not allowing God's will through. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for all the beautiful things that God is bringing through this platform and through all the platforms that God has blessed us to be a part of. So guys, I want to thank you for joining me for this amazing episode of the AFYL Podcast. Allow God's will to come through to your life so that you can account for it, so that you can be a blessing to others. God bless you, and I'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
This has been the Account for Your Life podcast with your host, the healthy accountant himself, Jay Moore. Until next time, make it a great day.